what the mind of man can conceive and believe it can achieve. This quote by Napoleon Hill seems simple, but have you ever stopped to consider how profoundly unsettling it can be? Because if this is true, if everything you believe can become reality, then what is holding you back? A lack of luck, a lack of time, or perhaps a lack of discipline? Hill believed that the true secret to success lay not in genius, luck, or available time, but in discipline, that invisible and often underestimated force that separates those who reach the top from those who remain stagnant. Most people believe they need inspiration to act, but what Napoleon Hill learned from observing leaders, inventors, and entrepreneurs is that inspiration is fleeting, while discipline is the engine that maintains momentum even when the fuel of motivation runs out. And it is precisely here that so many people stumble. They wait to feel ready, energized, or confident to begin, without realizing that true progress is born from action, not momentary enthusiasm. How many times have you felt that surge of impulse to start something grand? A new project, a healthy habit, a dream that finally seemed within your grasp. But it only took a few days of fatigue, a few distractions, or a simple lack of immediate results for everything to halt. The enthusiasm vanished, and the feeling of failure returned. It's a common scene repeated in millions of homes every single day. The problem isn't a lack of potential, but rather a lack of consistency. Discipline is what transforms intentions into achievements. It's what makes you wake up early, even when your body begs for another 5 minutes of sleep. It's what makes you continue studying when the rest of the world is relaxing. It's what keeps you moving, even without guarantees of success. Napoleon Hill stated that success is an exact science. If you apply the laws correctly, the result will follow. And one of these laws is simple: whoever acts with discipline achieves what they desire. For him, discipline wasn't rigidity, but freedom. The freedom from being held captive by one's own emotions, by laziness, or by procrastination. When you commit to something and follow through, even if no one else sees it, you strengthen an invisible muscle within yourself: self-trust. And this self-confidence is the cornerstone of all lasting success. A powerful example is that of Thomas Edison, the man who failed more than 1,000 times trying to invent the electric light bulb. 1,000 attempts. Imagine how many people would have given up on the 10th, or perhaps the 100th. Edison didn't continue because he was excited. He continued because he was disciplined. Each frustrated attempt was a calculated step towards discovery. When asked how he managed to persist, he replied, "I have not failed 1,000 times, I have just found 1,000 ways that won't work." This mindset is a reflection of discipline in its purest form, acting with constancy, even when the world calls it stubbornness. Now consider, how many projects have you abandoned halfway because the results didn't come quickly enough? How many dreams have died because you convinced yourself it wasn't the right time? This waiting for the perfect moment is a trap. Hill maintained that the right moment doesn't exist. It is created through disciplined action. Every small step taken today, even without motivation, is a brick that builds the castle of your future results. What destroys most people isn't difficulty, it's inconsistency. Napoleon Hill experienced this firsthand during the Great Depression. His family was on the verge of destitution. He had no money, no support, and no guarantee that his work would succeed. Anyone would have given up, but he decided to write, every single day, religiously. He woke early, sat at his table, and wrote, even without knowing if anyone would read his words. It was thus amid scarcity and despair that Think and Grow Rich was born, the book that would change his life and that of millions of people worldwide. Hill didn't wait for circumstances to improve. He used discipline to create them. He knew that every time we fail to act because we're not in the mood, we are training our minds to give up. And every time we act even without wanting to, we are training our minds to win. The difference between those who achieve and those who merely dream lies in this almost invisible detail: continuing even without energy. Humans are driven by habits, and habits are shaped by discipline. The brain learns to trust you when it perceives that your words transform into consistent actions. Modern neuroscience confirms what Hill intuited decades ago. Discipline literally changes the structure of the brain. The repetition of conscious actions strengthens the part responsible for self-control, the prefrontal cortex, making it easier to resist temptations, maintain focus, and complete tasks. It's as if every time you keep a promise to yourself, the brain registers, "He is trustworthy." And that registration changes everything. Perhaps today you feel tired, caught in a cycle of attempts and abandonments, believing you lack luck, time, or support. But the truth is, what you lack is continuity. Hill demonstrated that discipline is the foundation upon which any real transformation is built. Even when the world seems to be crumbling, it is your ability to stay the course that defines whether you will be remembered as someone who gave up, or as someone who persisted until victory. The secret isn't to do a lot. It's to do always, one step at a time, one disciplined choice per day. Success isn't the result of one giant leap, but of thousands of small steps taken with purpose, even when no one is watching. Hill learned and proved that discipline is the bridge between who you are now and who you want to become. And it is this bridge you must cross with courage, consistency, and faith in what you are building. Because in the end, that is what separates those who merely dream from those who truly live their dreams. Napoleon Hill said that man's greatest enemy lives not on the outside, but within his own mind. It is this enemy who whispers silently phrases like "not today" and "it won't work," "I'm not good enough." And the most curious thing is that most people believe these voices. They are not destroyed by circumstances, but by a lack of control over their own emotions. Hill called this a lack of emotional discipline, the power to control oneself, even when everything seems to be falling apart. Think about how many decisions you have made driven by anger, anxiety, or fear. How many times on impulse have you said something you didn't mean, given up on something important, or taken a path only to regret it later? The truth is, it's not emotions that destroy us, but the fact that we let them take the wheel. Emotional discipline is precisely the opposite of this. It is the art of remaining calm while everything around you seems chaotic. It is the ability to react with awareness, and not by instinct. Hill believed that self-mastery was the first step to success, because without it, man becomes a prisoner of his own feelings. He said that whoever does not govern himself will never govern anything. And science today confirms this view. Research from Harvard University reveals that people with a greater ability to regulate negative emotions have higher levels of well-being, healthier relationships, and, curiously, more financial stability. They make decisions based on clarity, not impulses. But the curious thing is that no one is born emotionally disciplined. It's a training. It's like strengthening an internal muscle, an invisible muscle called self-control. Hill believed that every time you choose to act calmly in the face of a challenge, you are strengthening this muscle. And every time you react impulsively, you are weakening it. He used to say that the truly strong person is not the one who defeats others, but the one who defeats themselves. A striking example of this is the story of Abraham Lincoln. Before becoming President of the United States, he faced bankruptcies, political defeats, and personal tragedies. He lost the woman he loved, lost elections, lost money, but he did not lose self-control. Even in moments of greatest despair, Lincoln maintained calm and serenity. When everyone expected an explosive reaction, he responded with reflection. And it was this capacity for self-control that transformed him into one of history's most respected leaders. Now imagine the opposite, people who live at the mercy of their emotions. They give up at the first difficulty, react with anger, make hasty financial decisions, or engage in useless arguments merely to alleviate momentary frustration. In the short term, it seems natural, but in the long term, this creates a life of regrets. Emotional discipline does not eliminate what you feel. It teaches you to use these emotions as fuel, not as poison. Hill experienced this brutally. During one of the most critical moments of his life, after losing the financial support of his investors and seeing his family's livelihood threatened, he fell into deep anguish. Everything indicated it would be the end. But instead of surrendering to despair, he decided to transform the pain into action. He sat down to write even with a heavy heart, even without hope, even without immediate results. It was during this period, dominated by emotional turbulence, that some of his most powerful ideas on faith and persistence were born. Hill proved with his own life that emotional control is the key that separates those who sink from those who use chaos as a springboard. And perhaps this sounds familiar, because all of us, at some point, feel the weight of doubt, guilt, anger, anxiety. But what you do in those moments defines your destiny. When all seems lost, the natural impulse is to stop, to give up, to retreat. However, Hill said that it is precisely then that man needs to be greater than his emotions. One must pause, take a deep breath, and ask themselves, is this decision moving me closer to or further away from what I want to build? This simple question, repeated mindfully, changes the trajectory of one's life. It's no coincidence that modern studies in positive psychology show that people who practice this pause, this conscious interval between stimulus and reaction, have higher levels of personal and professional success. This is because they are not driven by impulses. They respond, not react. And that is the essence of emotional discipline. Napoleon Hill also warned against subtle saboteurs, those external voices that seem harmless but erode your willpower. People who say you're trying too hard, relax a little, don't take everything so seriously. These are seemingly gentle phrases that, in reality, feed the habit of complacency. Hill called this the cult of comfort, the dangerous tendency to avoid discomfort at all costs, and it is precisely this comfort that destroys growth. He insisted that true emotional mastery arises when you are capable of acting correctly, even when everything within you urges otherwise. When the mind says stop, but purpose says continue. When emotion says retaliate, but wisdom says wait. This inner strength, when cultivated, completely transforms how you approach life. Every time you manage to act calmly in a moment of tension, you win an inner battle. Every time you choose patience instead of impulsivity, faith instead of doubt, focus instead of distraction, you are training your brain to respond differently. This isn't just philosophy, it's neuroscience. The brain reshapes itself through repetition. Each disciplined response creates a new neural connection, and each new connection reinforces your ability to maintain control in the future. Hill knew that emotional discipline is the heart of all other forms of discipline. Without it, any plan crumbles at the first storm. But with it, even the greatest challenges become stepping stones. He said that no one fails as long as they remain serene and act with purpose. That serenity is power. If today you face a difficult time, a loss, a disappointment, a doubt, remember that it's not the size of the problem that determines the outcome, but the control you exert over yourself in its face. Hill proved that it is possible to transform pain into purpose, fear into action, anger into direction. And every time you do that, you don't just solve a problem. You become stronger, more prepared, more in command of yourself. Because ultimately, true success begins when you master the only territory no one else can control, your own mind. Napoleon Hill used to say that discipline without direction is just wasted effort. And he was right. It's like rowing hard in a boat without a rudder. You get tired, you exert yourself, but you stay in the same place. Many people live exactly like this. They do a lot, work hard, strive, but they don't know exactly where they are going. Because of this, they feel exhausted and frustrated, believing they lack luck or talent, when in reality, what they lack is clarity. Hill believed that clarity is the fuel of discipline. It's what gives meaning to sacrifice, what transforms the simple act of waking up early into a purposeful step. He often said that those who don't know what they want end up being swept away by the desires of others. And this is what happens to most people. They live busy but not productive lives. They make lists, race against time, but never feel closer to their dreams. The absence of direction turns any effort into fatigue, and prolonged fatigue leads to giving up. Clarity is the light that guides that path. When you know exactly what you want and why you want it, even the most difficult days gain meaning. The Wright brothers are a perfect example of this. They had no money, no political support, and faced the discredit of the entire scientific community. But they had a clear vision to make man fly. This clarity kept them steadfast through every failure, every fall, every mocking laugh. It wasn't stubbornness, it was purpose. Hill deeply admired this determination, as it reflected exactly the mindset he advocated. Discipline is not born of obligation, it is born of understanding one's destiny. Clarity was also Hill's secret. In his diaries, he wrote detailed goals, almost as if describing scenes from a film that had not yet happened. He read these goals aloud every day, with conviction, visualizing the life he wanted to live. For years, one phrase repeated among his notes: to inspire millions to discover the power of the mind. It was a personal, unwavering commitment. Even when he was broke, even when no one believed in him, this clarity kept him going. It was as if his mind had already seen the destination before his body reached it. How many times have you told yourself, "I want to be happier, I want to be successful, I want to have more money"? These phrases achieve nothing because they are vague. The brain doesn't know what to do with imprecise ideas. Hill said that vague goals produce vague results. The first step is to give concrete form to your desire. It's not enough to want to be rich. You need to know how much you want to earn, how, in what time frame, and what you are willing to do for it. This clarity creates a positive internal pressure, an invisible force that pulls the mind in the right direction. When Hill asked people what their purpose was, few knew how to answer precisely. Most said what they didn't want. I don't want to fail. I don't want to suffer. I don't want to lose money. But that's not a purpose. It's disguised fear. Clarity requires courage because it forces you to look inward and admit what you truly desire. And often, that goes against what society expects of you. Hill knew this and said that most people prefer confusion to the responsibility of choosing, but those who choose with clarity, with conviction, free themselves from chaos and find power. Imagine now someone who wakes up every day without knowing why they get out of bed. The body goes, but the mind resists. Routine becomes automatic, purposeless. This is how boredom and exhaustion are born. But when there's a strong enough why, everything changes. Waking up early stops being a sacrifice and becomes a step towards something meaningful. Hill said that clarity transforms discipline into devotion. The same effort that once seemed heavy becomes light because you understand the reason. He also believed that clarity and faith go hand in hand. When you visualize something with vividness and emotion, you begin to believe it's possible. And belief is the spark that keeps discipline alive. Hill repeated his goals daily as affirmations, not because he was superstitious, but because he knew the brain learns through repetition. He said that repetition is the instrument by which desire transforms into conviction, and when conviction takes hold, doubt loses its power. This idea is reflected in everything we see in the real world. Think of the people you admire, those who seem to have inexhaustible strength. They are not moved solely by discipline or necessity. They are moved by an emotional purpose. That's why great athletes train to exhaustion and still say they love what they do. That's why entrepreneurs restart dozens of times and artists spend sleepless nights creating. Passion provides energy and discipline directs that energy. One without the other doesn't work. Hill said that without passion, discipline transforms into resistance, and resisting for too long is unsustainable. When you live doing what you don't love, the body obeys but the soul rebels. That's why so many people wake up tired even before the day begins, feeling like they are always running but getting nowhere. It's not a lack of effort, it's a lack of connection. They are trying to sustain a life that doesn't represent who they truly are. And perhaps this is the point where most people get lost. They seek motivation to continue on paths that don't inspire them. They look for techniques to be more disciplined, when what they really need is to reconnect with what gives them meaning. Hill believed that if you need willpower to do something every day, perhaps that's not your true path, because when there is passion, the will becomes automatic. Discipline is no longer a duty, it is a natural consequence of being aligned with what you love. But he also knew that discovering that passion isn't always easy. Sometimes it is buried under years of routine, fear, and obligations. And so, Hill proposed a simple but powerful question. What would you do every day, even if you were never paid for it? This question reveals where your true power lies, because genuine passion doesn't depend on reward. It is self-sufficient. It burns from within, and that flame is what fuels long-term discipline. When you find that flame, everything changes. Difficulties still exist, but the meaning completely shifts. Failure becomes learning. Obstacles become challenges. Effort becomes growth. Hill believed that passion gives discipline a purpose that reason alone cannot sustain. That's why passionate people seem to have more energy than others. It's not magic, it's alignment. The body moves in the direction the soul has chosen. Perhaps the greatest mistake people make is trying to force discipline into something that doesn't move them. Hill showed that true transformation begins when you dare to pursue what you truly love. Because life is too short to be sustained merely by obligation, discipline builds the path, but it is passion that makes the journey worthwhile. And when you find that balance, consistency ceases to be a burden and becomes freedom. The freedom to live true to who you are, to transform work into a calling and routine into an expression of yourself. Hill called this the discipline of the soul, one that doesn't need to be imposed, because it's born from within and flourishes in everything you do. Discipline is the invisible thread that stitches together every achievement, the link between what you dream and what you accomplish. It's not talent nor luck nor circumstance. It's the silent commitment to do what needs to be done, even when no one is watching. When it unites with clarity, emotional control, and passion, it becomes an unbeatable force. And it's this force that transforms ordinary people into extraordinary beings. If this content resonated with you, know that this is just the beginning of your journey. In the next video, you will climb one more step in your evolution of wisdom, one more stride towards becoming 1% better than you are now. Thank you very much for being here, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.